Very good. My name's Tim. I'm an addict.
Tim.
Thank you for having me here today. It's an honour to be here. There are so many other people you could have chosen, but for some reason I'm here, so I'll try and do a good job. My clean date is the 24th of July, 1993. Well done to God. It's not. There's no merit on my part. And in talking about steps 10, 11 and 12, I could just stick to those three, but it would be like describing the front part of an elephant, the trunks and the tusk. And if that's all I tell you about the elephant, you're going to have a very odd view of an elephant by the end of the talk. You're going to need a little sense of what the rest of the elephant looks like. And the point of step 12 is it is the answer to step 1. And so unless one understands really what step 1 is about, step 12 makes no sense whatsoever. It seems very bizarre. It seems irrelevant to an addict. When it says in step 1 that I'm powerless over alcohol, that my life has become unmanageable, that looks like it's two ideas with a dash separating them. But within a page, it corrects its error, as it were. And it says, here are 3 pertinent ideas. And the first pertinent idea is this, that we were alcoholic and we could not manage our own lives. That's the first of the 3 pertinent ideas. That's one idea, not 2 separate topics. It's one idea. And what powerlessness means, if you think of what power means, someone in your office has power. It means they're in charge, and when they say what's going to happen, it happens. And when I'm in charge of my life, I have agency. I make the decision as to what to do, and I do it, and I've got my grounds for doing it. I've got my reasons for doing it. Step 1 says that's all very well with the rest of your life, but when it comes to drugs, you don't have that agency. You are compelled to have the first drug. And having had the first drug, you are compelled to continue until your addiction lets go. You don't get to choose when your addiction lets go. Other people don't get to choose. You and other people together trying to get the addiction to let go won't work. If you've ever had a friend who's relapsed and you're trying to help them and they want to come back and you want to help them come back, but even you put them into detox and you think, oh, that's sorted out, and you get a little phone call, say they've discharged themselves. So you can do everything right and they can do everything right, but if the compulsion hasn't let go, it hasn't let go. And if I'm acting under compulsion, then there are no reasons anymore. I'm acting under compulsion. If someone tells you a story, let's say knock on the front door, and someone's trying to sell you a Hoover, and they are paid to say certain things about how marvellous this Hoover is. Because they're paid to say those things, you don't believe a word they say. That's why they have to proceed to the demonstration. If someone is paid to say something, I don't believe them. It may be true, it might not be true, but the fact they're compelled to say it by virtue of their employment means I'm not sure anymore. So when you asked me, why are you using? And I told you, quite rightly, people didn't believe me, because they could see I was acting under compulsion. Anything I said about why I was doing it was untrue. If you got a bus and the bus turns left and you want to know why the bus turned left, you don't ask the passenger, you ask the driver. If you ask the passenger, why did you turn left? Well, I turned left because I wanted to go to the library. It's untrue. The bus turned left because the driver turned left. The whole point of step 1 is that as an addict, whether I'm using or not, in an untreated condition, I'm not driving the bus. The addiction is driving the bus. Now, this simplifies things a lot because it means I can no longer say, I drank and used because ... I used on feelings of ... This was happening in my life, therefore I used. All this stuff happened in my childhood, therefore I became an addict. I was surrounded by this, therefore I'm an addict. Untrue. Because I was surrounded by people who are just as messed up as me. I can have the same week as someone else, and they don't use and I do. I'm an addict and they're not. And then the funny thing is, in the big book, you'd think that all the stories about people who are relapsing go like this, well, I was having a really hard day and it was on me and I had these feelings of abandonment and disconnection. I felt disconnected from other people. And so I drank. No, it doesn't say that. It's an end of a perfect day. Boom, drunk. In the peak of mental and physical health, drunk. It's the end of it. So there's no... the only thing that is true, why did I use? Because I was an addict. End of explanation. And why does someone continue to use after they come into recovery? I continued to use for 6 months. It's because I didn't adopt the spiritual solution adopted in AA. That's the only answer. All of the stories I told about why it happened, untrue. They seem true, and that's where addiction becomes really interesting. Because even in my sickness, I had a vestige of pride left in me. And the pride said, you're in charge of this. You're all right. You're just getting the formula a little bit wrong. Yeah. Try a little harder and you'll find a way to use sufficiently to get the hit that you need, but not so much that it tips over and destroys everything else. You need to keep the bulkheads firm between the using bit of your life and the everything else, which is producing the vessel in which I could do the using. That was the only purpose of the rest of my life, was to give me a context in which to use. I didn't want to be dead because I wanted to use. Or at least I thought I did. Now, right at the end, I won't tell the whole story. Right at the end, I became aware that I was using not because I wanted to, but because I was compelled. I no longer wanted to. I no longer enjoyed it. I hated what it was doing. And I was watching myself do it as if watching a film from the outside. You know those dreams where you're watching yourself doing things, but you have no ability to stop yourself. You're just the spectator. I realised I was the spectator. And once I realised I was using under compulsion, not because I wanted to, addiction's days were numbered at this point. So if I was my addiction, how would I get me to continue using for years, which I did? By convincing me that I'm doing it, that I have agency and I'm doing it because I have damn good reason. And the terrifying thing is, for years into recovery, I continued to say, I used on feelings of I used because I liked the effect it produced. I carried on saying those things. Those were the lies of the addiction. The cover story, to prevent me from seeing that I was under compulsion, that there was a parasite in charge of my life. I was its host. The pride doesn't like that, and the addiction knows that. So it needs the cover story, and I believe the cover story. And we share the cover stories with each other and nod very with great identification. Oh, yeah, I had the same cover story as well. But the book is very interesting. It says none of these excuses make sense in the light of the terrific havoc that an alcoholic's bout creates. None of them make sense. yeah, I liked it, but I did it when I didn't. And right from the beginning, I started to have periods evenings where things went very, very wrong. So this is about compulsion. And yes, it's insane, but I didn't do it because I was insane. Insane is the description from the outside. You look at what he's doing, it's insane. And it wasn't because of emotion, it wasn't because I was stupid, it wasn't because I've got a bad memory. And all of these things simplify recovery. Because it's not a memory problem, then reminding myself is not the reason I go to meetings. I don't go to meetings to remind myself of what it was, because the problem is not that I have a memory problem. I didn't do it because of emotion. So the purpose of recovery is not to sort out my emotions. I didn't do it because I couldn't think straight. So the purpose of recovery is not to teach me how to think rationally. It's about one thing and one thing only. There's one thing that can come between the compulsion and me. Now, the funny thing is, if you stick around for long enough and you live life enough, there are going to be moments when a drink or a drug or something else is going to seem like a very good idea. So recovery, I don't think, promises that I will go for the rest of my life without having a temptation, without having a thought, without having an insane moment. My recovery does not depend on something called emotional sobriety, whatever that is. If I thought that my life depended on me keeping on an emotional even keel every moment of every day for the rest of my life and never having an insane thought, I would jump off a bridge. Forget it. Because life is going to have other ideas. And the fact that this is a curriculum with endless lessons, some of those lessons are very difficult. I had a period when I was 17 years clean where, for whatever reason, I was going through a very bad time. And I cried every day for 3 months. And people that know me, I'm not a crier. I'm not a sentimental person. I'm on the cold end of that spectrum. 3 months crying every day for hours. It was the most embarrassing thing. But that had nothing to do with the fact of whether or not I was going to stay sober and clean. Nothing. So the pressure is off. You don't need to get emotionally balanced. And I've had periods of significant delusion about the nature of reality and the nature of my life and what is going on. That's not what gets someone drunk. It's all about the one thing that can get between the compulsion and me, that can, when the addiction gets reactivated in my physical brain and it starts to send little messages up to the front, to the command and control center, let's go off to the pub, or let's have a drug, or let's do whatever. I need something to stop that converting into action, to stop it converting into me whistling off to the off license or making a phone call. And it's really interesting, on page 154 of the big book is the worked example of what a recovered person looks like. And you know how sometimes someone misbehaves in a group conscience meeting and everyone afterwards says, that wasn't very sober, was it? That wasn't very spiritual. I'll tell you what spiritual looks like. It doesn't mean having a little soft voice like this and like being so like perfectly calm at all times. Nothing ever ruffles my feathers. That's not it. If you like that, good luck to you. But we won't have much to say to each other over dinner. I'll tell you that for nothing. What spiritual looks like is page 154. Bill W. is in the most appalling state in terms of his external circumstances. He hears the clinking of the glasses in the bar at the end of the corridor, and he's gripped with the insanity of the first drink, this terrific compulsion to have the first drink. The first thing that happens is he turns physically and walks down the corridor. And then he starts to think about the alcoholics who would die if he drinks again and doesn't continue his project of trying to help other people to stay sober. And he shivers in response to the notion of going and drinking. And right at the end of the chain, his sanity returns. So his actions become sane before his mind settles itself. Because he's trained himself over months not to be thinking about himself, but to be thinking about the welfare for others. So a friend of mine who is not in the army, so I don't know how he has the legitimacy to tell this story, but he says apparently in the army, one of the purposes of discipline is so that when you're under fire and your arse is on the line, the training kicks in and you act automatically in accordance with the chain of command. And I think that's what recovery is about. That spiritual is being able to respond automatically in practice, in action, to the situation that presents itself without the action having to have my seal of approval on it first. So to take the established, indicated action, which is programmed into my being, I don't have a vote at the table. In the morning when I ask God what to do, I'm not having a little one-to-one with God. This is not two-way prayer where we're on opposite sides of the table. We are in that conversation. God and I are in that conversation for very different reasons. God is much bigger than me. I'm in the board meeting where God is holding the board meeting and God is the only director on the board of directors. What am I? The minute taker. This is not a symmetrical relationship where we're having a nice little chat and my turn, your turn, my turn. No, my job, listen, write stuff down, keep my big fat mouth shut. That's the relationship with God. That's what spiritual, I think, looks like. It's not about shiny white teeth. It's about other things. It's about hard work. I know it's very unpopular. Particularly in the trendy parts of East London where I live and go to meetings. Traditional values are not popular there. But hard work, honestly, I think is the answer to addiction. And it's not hard work in the outside world. That may or may not be necessary to put food on the table. But it's that wonderful line in Bill's story where he says if an alcoholic didn't perfect and enlarge his spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice for others, he couldn't possibly survive the certain trials and low spots ahead. So the purpose of steps 2 through 11 is to place me in a position where I can be useful to God. Not because I'm clever or know anything or have any special skills, because this whole thing is entirely unprofessional. When people try to professionalize it, it waters it down and it stops working. This is about being on the same level as the person that I'm trying to help, but simply further along. That's it. It's not a difference vertically, it's a difference horizontally. I am further ahead, so I know some of the pitfalls that you're about to fall into. And I've seen the thing that you're going through for the first time. I've seen that 500 times before, so I know how it turns out. I know how to get behind that. So as a sponsor, one does have some knowledge and experience, but it's because I'm on the same level. It's because I'm cut from the same cloth that I'm able to help. It's not because I'm special. Step 12 has got 3 elements. The first element is the waking up element. Now, I'm not going to denigrate, as it were, the spiritual side of the program or the great spiritual insights that a person might acquire over the course of their recovery and the realm of the spirit and all of those things. I think all of that is true. But I'm not going to give, as it were, a metaphysical talk. When you go to conferences, AA conferences, the Sunday morning speaker is always called the spiritual speaker, and it's a deadly slot because everyone thinks that you're going to say something very spiritual. But the waking up is not, you see, I know someone who, very good recovery and everything, all of that, did lots of good helping for many years. But his view was that the spiritual awakening was about insight into the ultimate reality that lies beyond the material world. And so he phoned me up one day wondering whether microdosing, do you have that out here? I bet you've heard speak of it. Microdosing, some hallucinogenics, to give yourself, like a little bit like LSD, but because it's from a qualified shaman from Puerto Rico, then it's legitimate. If it was the same substance from Kevin off the estate, you'd be a bit hesitant about it. But because it's, well, you paid £5,000 to go and stay in a 5-star hotel to be microdosed. And his view was that the point of the whole thing was to understand the true nature of the universe, and then you're going to be fine. And people do say, well, Bill W., experimented with LSD, as though he'd sort of gone onto the streets and found it and was sequestered together with some friends, and they were, having a few tabs. No, it was in a clinical trial to see what would happen to alcoholics if they had LSD or something similar to it, one of the earlier forms of it. And what they discovered was, let's not go further down this path. So it wasn't a rogue action. It was part of a well-meaning journey down a path where they put a nice gate to stop people going any further. But he left AA about a year ago. I don't know what's happened to him now. The waking up is not I'm not trying to crack the code of the universe. What I'm waking up to is something far more banal, far more prosaic, the prosaic steel girder, as it talks about in We Agnostics. I'm waking up to something ordinary. What I'm waking up to is the fact that God says, you know what, Sonny Jim, I've had a plan for you the whole time, and I've got a lot of work for you to do. I've got some things that I need you to be doing. You specifically. I mean, everyone else too. There's a plan for them. You haven't been singled out. Everyone, there's a plan. Now, you're a little bit late to the party, Sonny Jim, but I'm glad you're finally here. Now you're here, there's some work to do. That's what I'm waking up to, not the fundamental nature of reality. If there are little blue flashes during a meditation session, great, but that's not the point. The point, as it says on page 77, is to be fitted to be of maximum service to God and the people around me. And so the two things that I'm supposed to do is carry the message and practice these principles in all our affairs. Now, there's a line on page 19 which could easily send you going off down the wrong track, where it says a much more important demonstration of our principles lies in our respective homes, occupations and affairs. And the danger which lies in this is saying, well, 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, 5 years sober, AA is very good. You drop in once in a while, you aerial bomb the meeting with a few spiritual nuggets, and off you go again at the end of it. You never land the plane and get out of it, just a fly through. Because God's will for me really lies in all of these other things. But you've got to read it carefully. The book is often saying something very, very different to what is heard in meetings. And if there's a toss-up between the two, go with the book and don't argue with the people in the meetings, but just go with the book. What it says, a much more important demonstration of our principles lies in our respective homes, occupations and affairs. Demonstration to whom? To the people we are trying to first of all convince that this works, and secondly, to persuade them to do what we've done. So part of the effort, part of the attraction, in fact, the chief part of the attraction of the program is the fact that, 32 years clean, I've got a perfectly good life. I've got an occupation which more than pays the bills. I have a home which is paid off. I'm married. We don't argue, and we haven't argued in the 20 years we've been together, because I've got a program and he doesn't need one. He's just fine already. My mother, in her latter years, my other half and I did a lot of looking after. I've got good relations with my family. I don't really see very many of them, and that's part of why we have such good relations. But there are no... But I know when not to push it. I know when to leave well alone. And that's very helpful. And God's will is not necessarily for my family life to look like anyone else's in particular. It is what it is. People are on the journeys they're on. It's fine. I can handle money. I can handle food. I don't have any problems in any area of my life. Difficulties arise, challenges arise, temptations arise, but there's nothing I'd class as a problem. Every single thing that has happened has been solved one by one through the application of the steps, the traditions and the concepts. Now, saying it from the top table doesn't do anything, but when people get to know you at your home group and they see you at fellowship afterwards and they get to see you in operation, it's how one's handling everything else which sells the product. One doesn't need to sell anything in recovery. One simply needs to live the right life directed by God on the outside, and the selling does itself. So the point of my outside life that's not the point of my life. That's exhibit A to demonstrate that this works. But the really important thing, it's this endless chain of recovery, one person talking to another. And it's a little bit like a fire. A forest can be dry for days, weeks, months, and years. Lightning strikes, or someone tosses away a cigarette, or there's a barbecue, or the light falls through some water and sets fire to something. A forest fire can start for 1,000 reasons, but once the first flames are flickering up, it propagates in exactly the same way each time. You set fire to the little bit next to you, and that's what recovery is like. I set fire to the next person, they set fire to the next person, and it's being part of that continuous chain of fire, which goes all the way back to Bill W. and to the people before him. That is the thing which makes my life worthwhile. Everything in my external life, things come and go, careers come and go, relationships come and go, friends come and go, the money comes and goes. Can I just repeat that? The money comes and goes. If my life and the quality of my life depends on the output, on the results, on the outcomes in my external world, my peace, my identity, my value, my purpose is now pegged to a stock price which is going to go up and down, and I'm watching the stock prices all day. I can't live like that anymore. One thing matters, relationship with God, that is the end of it. And the purpose of steps 10 and 11 is to enable that to take place. Now, the description of the steps, yes, we've got them up there. One of the difficulties with having those up, it's a good idea to have them up, but one of the difficulties is that they're simply a quick way of remembering rather a lot of material. And it's important to remember, in the big book, in one passage, it says the 12 steps which summarize our program. They're not the program, they're the summary. If you had a recipe book, there's a contents page, let's say with 12 recipes, but you couldn't bake the lasagna based on the word lasagna. You might have, if you're a good cook, you might have a good stab at it. But there are lots of things you wouldn't have any clue about. You can't just make it up. And it's like that with prayer and meditation. You see the words prayer and meditation. You don't read what's actually said in the book about what that means, and you impose on it your understanding from outside AA as to what prayer and meditation is. And if you look through the Big Book passage on prayer and meditation from 85 to 88, you can look again and again and again, and you won't see anything in common with the contemporary notion of what meditation is. If you got 10 people from the Waitrose up the road and said, what is meditation? You can bet your bottom dollar that all 10, unless any of them were a member of CA, all 10 would say something about Buddhism and mindfulness and breathing and posture, and they'd be right, because that is what meditation is understood to be in the outside world. Now, there is Christian meditation, there are other forms of meditation as well, but that's the prevailing view. And my mistake for years in recovery was to bring my external understanding to what the words there meant, rather than remembering that the practices of those steps came first, and those steps, those wordings came later. And when you look at what prayer and meditation is in the Big Book, and 10 and 11 generally, so 84 to 88, basically, if you imagine a car from first thing in the morning to last thing at night, there's the preparation for the journey in the morning. You might stop at the motorway service station during the day for a little pause, and at the end of the day you might do a bit of maintenance. You might clean the car, you might fill it with petrol, you might change the oil, you might take all the empty cups out, you might do a number of things, check for roadkill. And in between, you're motoring. And the thing is about 10 and 11, 10 has got a little bit of meditation in it. It's got a few ideas about meditation in it. Step 11 has got some inventory in it. So the real difference between 10 and 11 isn't so much about inventory versus meditation. It's about, is it stuff that you're doing as you're motoring through the day, or is it the stuff that you do when you stand back a little bit? 11 is standing back, 10 is motoring. So when I'm doing step 10 during the day, what that means, it says we continue to correct mistakes as we go along. And this sounds very nice, doesn't it? What that means is, as soon as the temptation to resent arises, I'm supposed to catch it before it catches me. When the temptation to fear arises, to be afraid arises, I'm supposed to catch it and stop it. In the same way that when you're driving and you hear the rumble strips, you don't wait until the end of the day to start turning the steering wheel, you turn it now. And I was very self-indulgent for a lot of years, thinking, well, I'm going to catch this stuff when I do a review at the end of the day, so I'm going to let rip now. I'm going to let myself indulge the resentment, the upset, the envy, the worry, the fretting, the jealousy, whatever it is, I'm going to indulge it. And there's a terrible line on page 66 where it says about resentment, to the extent that we permit these. Oh, I'm permitting it, am I? Resentment doesn't happen to me. It is an activity that I engage in. Same with fear. Fear is a choice. Fear will knock at the door and say, here's a list of things to be frightened of. Over to you. Are you going to take me up on the offer, or are you going to affirm the power of God to overcome any situation you face? If I give in to fear and then complain at the end of the day, well, I'm full of fear, I poured the fear into myself by permitting myself to think fearful thoughts. My poor old other half gets quoted by me a lot on this, but I once asked him how he handles, he's in a very senior position doing something or other. I've never understood it, and he stopped trying to explain it years ago. But a lot of very clever people get very cross with him because of what he's doing professionally. And I said, how do you handle people who resent you? And he said, first of all, I'm embarrassed for them because it's so childish. Secondly, they need to get over it because it gets in the way. And he has the same view of fear. He has the same view of guilt. The job is to correct the situation now. And that's what step 10 is. It's the instant correction in the moment, in recognition that when I'm upset about anything for any reason, I'm lapsing back into a childish attitude towards the world, one of entitlement that things should go my way and be pleasant and convenient. And secondly, a denial that God is available at all times to show me how to respond to any situation that arises with poise, with cheerfulness, with gratitude. It even says on 133, when trouble comes, we cheerfully capitalise it as an opportunity to demonstrate his omnipotence. And that's what I've trained myself to do. If something disagreeable happens or I can see a challenge coming, I cut resentment and fear off at the pass by saying, right, God, over to you. You're going to have to show me how to navigate this situation, and I'm going to pay attention and then tell everyone else how you've handled this. This is going to be really interesting. I don't need to do anything except grab the popcorn and watch how God solves it. And it's fascinating. You catch it before it catches fire, and there's almost nothing to do. You let it catch fire, you're going to be firefighting for days, weeks, months, or years. And once that starts to sink in, the impetus is there to really do something about it in the moment, even though you really want to get back into the limelight. Because that's the secret attraction of resentment, of fear, of all of these things. They have me as the hero of my own self-constructed nightmare. And it's awful, but I'm centre stage. And then I will grandstand in meetings and in my... People say, how are you? Oh, well, the week I've been having. And guess who's the star of that week? Me. Even though it's other people doing things to me, I'm the pincushion which everyone is sticking their pins in, but I'm the pincushion. I'm at the centre. I'm at the core of this. I've got everyone focusing on me. That's the attraction. That's the temptation I need to say no to. And then step 11, I'll finish on this. Step 11 is terribly simple. You can scour those pages looking for anything fancy, but it doesn't boil down to more than this. In the morning, God, what do you want me to do? If you get stuck halfway through the day, what do you want me to do? Or you get to the end of the day, what went wrong? This went wrong, that went wrong, that went wrong. God, what do you want me to do tomorrow? And give me the strength to do it. What do you want me to do? Give me the strength to do it. Everything in step 11 is a variation on that. And one just last thing, and this'll ruin a lot of people's hobbies, perhaps. So it says in the evening review on page 86 that we constructively review our day. So far, so good. It says, were we resentful? And then there are some other questions. Were we resentful? The legitimate answer to that is either yes or no. It's not asking us to elaborate. So I never need to process another resentment with anyone ever again. What I need to do is get rid of it. If you discover there's rubbish in the bin that needs taking out, you don't go in the bin and fish it out and analyse it. You take it out. Because the message is the same. I didn't get my own way. Fear, I'm not going to get my own way. Real and fancy, the only difference between resentment and fear, resentment is my negative reaction to a fact, something that has happened. Fear is a negative reaction to something that I fancy may be happening or may have happened or may happen in the future. But they're the same thing. It's I don't like that. That's all. There's no great lesson behind any resentment other than I didn't get my own way. I'm going to have to get used to not getting my own way. And the best thing to do is just not have a way. And then you can't not get it because there's nothing not to get. And I'll finish with this single phrase. There was a Swedish politician in the 1950s who wrote some very interesting material before he was killed. He said, for everything that has been, thank you. For everything that shall be, yes. And I'm going to stop at that. Thanks.